Hi everybody, welcome out to the Dice Tower. My name is Chris Yi.
I'm a statue. Shh, keep going.
That's Wendy Yi. Today we're taking a look at a game called Terracotta Army. This is a game from Board and Dice about building up the Terracotta Army. Are you still really not going to move?
Okay, fine.
Yes, all right, so gotcha. Gag worth it completely. So you're building up the Terracotta Army. Oh my gosh.
You're breaking the Terracotta Army.
You're breaking the Terracotta Army. You should have made it out of something stronger. So this is a worker placement-ish game with some interesting wheel mechanisms and some area majority. Wendy is going to show you how it's played.
In Terracotta Army, you're trying to build up your terracotta warriors over here so that you can do some cool scoring in rows and columns as well as groups. And you're going to do that by placing actions on this little spinning board over here, building some of these extra soaring dudes down here, and doing end of round bonuses as well. Let's start over here with this worker placement board. This is going to be what you're going to do on each one of your actions. You can spend an extra couple bucks to move either the top circle or the middle circle, the direction that the arrows show on them. But also, this is where you're going to be placing your workers. Everyone starts with these basic workers, which are craftsmen, and they are going to be able to go onto any empty space. Now, when I say space, I mean one of these little triangle areas. Now, the fancy artisans, which you can upgrade to, they can go onto any space that has only a small worker on it. Once you have these two workers there, both of the space is completely locked down and no one else can go there. Now the spaces, when you take your actions, you'll start from the middle and you'll work your way out. The middle actions let you do stuff like get money or wet your clay or turn your clay in for some of your Terracotta Army dudes and get them on the map. The middle section is for getting clay and doing some of the specialty actions. And then the bottom circle lets you do these actions where you can flip over some of your weapons or you can build some of the specialty neutral statues. Next, let's talk about these specialists over here. If you take an action, which would be in that middle circle that has one of these specialists on it, you have to pay to basically have them work. And so what you're going to do is you're going to pay the lowest value of these little specialist workers that you have. And then you're going to be able to do that action. They all have different actions, and that's what's on the right side of their space. They do different things like giving you clay, let you move the scoring markers for each round. Maybe you can flip over some weapons. They all do a variety of things. But then they also, at the beginning of each round, give you an income. And so that income is a little bit of engine building that goes on. Once your worker's there and you've paid for it, you can continue to use this action for free afterwards. So at the end of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 rounds, you're going to have some scoring over here. And they increase as the game goes along. These all depend on the board. So the person with the most would get 5 points. So the most dark brown statues on the board would get 5 points. And then anybody else that has a dark brown statue or has presence on the board will gain 2 points. This continues so forth. Some of these have to do with placement, like which quadrant of the board they're used in, what column, and sometimes it's resources. So this is the person with the most clay. Finally, over here we have the neutral statues, and these all cost the weapons that you will flip over throughout the game. When you spend one, you just flip it back over to its unavailable side. You also pay some money, but these are going to give you endgame scoring, or they'll give you some extra abilities, some tiebreakers and such. So these will go on the board and they will not have your color attached to them, but they will then be available for basically everyone. The bard scores everybody in their row and column at the end of each round. They get a point. The crossbowmen, you point at one of your statues and that statue then has tie-breaking abilities. This dude over here scores for endgame for everybody in an 8 square around him. A majorities and a dominance for that. And then this horse over here actually extends how far you go on the board. Now that we talked about all those different actions and possibilities, let's come back to this board over here and let's talk about all the different ways that it scores. So these little inspector guys are going to be moving to the right throughout the game and to the top. And what they're going to do is they're going to score whatever rows and columns that they are in, as well as all those end of round and end game scoring stuff that we have. And so these will move and adjust depending on that. And then everything is going to score based on dominance and presence. Now, dominance means that you have the majority. So for example, this blue, blue, yellow, blue has majority. Presence just means that you have something in that grouping. So for this line, this right here, yellow has presence. So they would get a smaller amount of points. Blue would get the most points. Now there's some other ways that we score. So these will just score end of each round as well as the end of round scoring. But then at the end of the game, the additional scoring is by color. Now you see how we have two little white guys by themselves, some gray guys, and some dark brown. These are all in groups of at least 2, so they will score for presence and dominance in their grouping. Doesn't matter who's in those colors, so we have 2 different players here, and they're both tied. This nice little crossbow guy is a tiebreaker, so actually blue would gain dominance and yellow would gain presence. But these guys over here that are completely by themselves, they will score for nothing. You have to be in at least a group of 2 to be able to get that group scoring at the end of the game. If you look at this nice little box over here as well, when you build your statues, you get points based on how many have been built. The first ones to be built are unique and exciting, and they're worth more victory points. Later on, when we have stuff built of that particular color, they're worth a lot less. There's also ways to spend the matching symbol of swords and spears and such to get some sort of special ability and special power, which is on the side of the box. So that's all explained there. But yeah, so the majority of points comes from this piece over here, but you're doing a lot of other stuff to get your dudes on the map and scoring. So that's basically how you play Terracotta Army.
So I was really excited for this game, Chris, when it came out.
I like this. I like this game series. This designer's done some good stuff in the past. Not everything of his I've liked, like Dark Ages, incidentally from the same company. I wasn't a huge fan of. I liked several of the things going on, and I thought the game was a bit long.
I did like Origins.
Origins.
I thought that had some really cool dice mechanisms and a lot of fun stuff that was going on, and the interaction I enjoyed. I think that Terracotta Army has mechanisms that I really enjoy, and then some stuff that completely ruins the game for me.
You're just being that straightforward.
Just that straightforward, yeah. I think that there's a lot of good stuff that I wish was in a different game, I guess.
There is, and I'm kind of in a similar boat, right? And we've tried this with different groups of people, so it wasn't just you and I had a bad experience playing this together. It's easy to think that way when you think, I imagine that these reviewers are going to like this game. Maybe they're just walking away from one bad experience. That's not really the case here.
Right.
I like so many of the ingredients, but I don't love the quiche that it made. I don't love the combined thing.
So that action wheel, I think is a very cool concept. And I feel like we've seen a lot more wheels in games in general recently.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of you can change up what action combination you can get as for that one worker placement. You're like, oh, I really need to wet all of my clay so that I can have that clay accessible to build. So I'm gonna move this over so I can get that wet clay action, but also I'm gonna get some money, and I'm gonna do a different thing later. So I like that a lot, but I don't love some of the choices they made with it. So for example, like you can get a little bonus if you don't want to take the middle or whatever you like, the most
the inner ring
and the middle ring.
And the second ring.
Yeah, if you can get a bonus of that. But for some reason, the outside ring doesn't have it.
Right. Oh, you can't really utilize this action? How about you get a clay or a coin? Okay, that's nice. The outside action is the hardest one to pull off. You're most likely to already have a weapon readied, or you're most likely to not be able to afford one of the special miniatures into the grid.
It's the one that seems like you need that consolation prize.
And it's just it's one slight extra rule that you have to remember. Instead of, the rule could just be you could forego any of the 3 actions to get a coin or a wet clay. Cool.
Right.
And that sounds like a minor gripe, sure, but that's on top of remembering lots of other little details about the game. Spending the 2 coins to rotate either section of the wheel sounds great because you can really combo things together in a satisfying way. The downside is that completely shifts the worker placement dynamic for everybody else at the table as well. And so I find that this game does kind of grind a little bit because you say, okay, as long as one of these 2 spots is open by my turn, that'd be great. Unless someone rotates a wheel, in which case everything goes kaput.
I have to start fresh.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of, I can't really think too much in between my turns because that worker placement rotating wheel dynamic could change significantly. And so now it's my turn. And now I'm kind of holding up the game because I got to say, hold on, guys, let me read the wheels here.
Yeah, there were definitely points where I was like, I'm just not even going to try to figure out my turn in advance because it's not worth it. I know it's going to change. And so that, yeah, it definitely slows it down. It grinds it to a halt. There's also an action that lets you double that innermost circle, but there's only a few actions in that innermost circle worth doubling. Like when you wet your clay, you wet all your clay. I don't need to double that.
Yep.
And when I'm building one of these terracotta warriors, that's great if I can build 2, but also if they both cost 4 clay, that's super rare. So things may not align, and I just feel like there's a lot of actions on that wheel that just end up getting thrown away. And you could say that that's poor play, but also I feel like that shouldn't happen as often as it does.
Yeah, I would say almost a third of the actions on the inner wheel aren't really worth doubling. When you upgrade a small to a big worker, that feels so good. It's investment for next round. You can't double that action though, because you have to upgrade the worker that you put out. So you can't double that. That doesn't make sense. And so, man, there's so many things about this game that it does right though. And so if the things that we're complaining about do not bother you at all, then I think that you might like the soup. You might like the quiche, the ingredients all thrown together. But because it's clever worker placement. I like the wheels. I like the upgrades that you can get on the bottom part of the board, the specialists or whatever, where you upgrade an action. You pay for it once, and now every time you activate that specialist again in the future, you can do it for free. That
Plus,
seems
it does a
pretty
tiny
neat.
bit of engine building because you get the money or you keep a clay wet each round.
Yeah, and so that's great. I think the clay wet drying out mechanism is really clever. You can hoard a bunch of resources for the next round, but it's going to dry out, so you have to spend an action to wet it and make it ready to use. I love all that. I love the fact that they had the foresight to put this box in here that holds all the miniatures.
With their victory point values and their actions.
That's great. Yeah, and there's a little player aid type stuff on the side. It's not the best symbology, but that is really good. That's so useful. It's a nice presentation factor, but it's also really, really useful.
And everybody can see it at the table because the actions are on all sides and everybody can see the top.
What is not useful is having 4 different types of warriors that could be described as brown. You know, I would like, hey, this is on the other side of the table. Could you build, I'm going to build one of those brown warriors. Not that brown. Not that one. Sorry, I guess tan. No, the darker tan. I've had that conversation multiple times playing this game.
Terrible decision. Absolutely terrible decision.
I think the biggest thing, though, that hurts this game for me, and I think for you as well.
Definitely for me, is that inspector moving.
The scoring of the majority.
The rows and the columns.
I like majority mechanism. I like majority scoring mechanism a lot.
You know what? I even like the end game scoring mechanism, and I like the end of round scoring mechanisms.
Okay.
I like those. It's literally those inspectors. So as you're moving those little red pieces, because people can control that and they can move more or less using those little extra specialist actions, they can completely destroy all that you did. And it's very hard to move your little what are those called? Your Terracotta Army men. There you go. That's what I was looking for.
Right.
It's very hard to move them. There's like one action that you may do once or twice a game that you can move one of them. And so it messes with the whole setup. Like, that's the bulk of the points right there. That is a lot of points that someone can just be like, I'm moving it where nobody gets points. Or I'm moving it where everybody gets points but you.
Yes.
Sorry. And in a 2-player game, it is exacerbated to an extreme that is not fun. I do not at all recommend this at 2.
That's the thing, is that I could see people really enjoying this with a 3, maybe a 4-player count. 4 is very long. 3 is still long.
Yeah.
But the thing with 2-player for me is I don't like that decision of, hey, I have this action that I can move the inspector, and you thought you were going to score 7 points for having the majority, for having dominance. You are now going to score 0 points. That doesn't feel good at any player count. Darn, you got me, right?
Yeah. In
a 2-player game, though, hurting the other player at the table is mathematically as good as gaining points yourself. In a 4-player game, I won't just go out of my way to spite Wendy and say, haha, you don't get points, because that doesn't actually help me against the other 2 people at the table.
Right.
I might strategically do that some points if Wendy is in the lead, but in a 2-player game, you just have to play really mean. I don't like this type of that you can control which columns and rows are going to score majority, especially in a two-player game. And two-player games are very important to us because that's a lot of what we play. That's about a third of my gaming, actually. I've been keeping stats this year. Is
two players. Sure.
Is two players. So many good things in this game that are kind of marred by the total combination of it, unfortunately.
It is. There's some other issues that I have with first player versus last player. It doesn't automatically switch in any way. You have to waste an entire section of the action board for that. But also there's perks for being first and perks for being last. So we didn't really ever switch first player in the games that we played. It was a weird combination. It
is kind of a weird thing. And being in last place is a huge, nice advantage because you might get the ultimate say on moving those inspectors or being able to build out last. So we found that the person in last place really never had an incentive to be like, and I'm going to grab first player now and be at a huge disadvantage on those column scorings and stuff. I'm sure that there's other reasons why it's better to be first and middle and everything, but I really wanted to love this game. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we get comments that say, well, it sounds like Chris and Wendy went into this game not wanting to like it or something, but no, this is one that
I was very excited.
I went into this thinking, I'm so excited to love this game. And I didn't. And so I think final scoring wise and everything, this game's a 5 for me. It's disappointing to give a game that kind of a score. One that you were very excited about, one that you like so many of the mechanisms, the choices, end of round scoring and end of game scoring, and all these cool things going on. A great presentation for the most part, minus the coloring. But it doesn't work for me, and I just don't want to play it again. I don't want to play it again. Not even I'll give it a month, and if someone says, hey, I got it set up, I think I'll pass. So that's a 5 for me, despite how much stuff I do enjoy in it. I don't really want to play again.
I am right with you, Chris. I'm also going to give this a 5 for those very same reasons. At the end of the day, I want to see these mechanisms in a better game with more enjoyable scoring, with more opportunities to score, and some other strategic decisions, because at the end of the day, this wasn't fun. It wasn't fun the multiple times we played it. And I don't mind long games. I don't mind thinky games. I don't mind interactive games. But I didn't have fun, and nobody at the table had fun with us either. So it's very sad that this is how it turned out.
Yeah. So there you go. Unfortunately, our thoughts on Terracotta Army from Board and Dice. Maybe you enjoy this one, and feel free to explain why you do enjoy it in the comments. But until next time, thanks for coming by. Another Dice Tower review. My name is Chris Yi.
I'm Wendy Yi.
#WetThatClay.